DNA sequencing or physics or high-level biochemistry. These are arenas where I have massive deficits. And yet this isn't considered a strange or silly or weird thing in our society. We understand this at the main level. There are a lot of very complicated, very detailed things that exist in our world that not everyone's ever going to understand. And so, when you're building out your science fiction or your fantasy, it's okay to have things that don't make sense. Sometimes there are things that come back to later that make sense. Ironically, one of the things that is have somebody interview and explain it as if they do understand it specifically and well, and then later on blow that open, because that's actually how things exist here. Think about how many laws of physics, or specifically think about medical science and how it has dramatically changed over human history. If you go back and look at some of the medieval, medical science, it is archaic. And that is totally fine. It's not like people were opinions. It's just they didn't have microscopes. They didn't have the background of knowledge that we do. And so, of course, they were just making assumptions and trying to figure out how things existed. People used to, bled out because that's how they thought they were going to get the nasty stuff out of them. There's a lot of things like that in history that we just didn't have scientific information on, but we made to. And that exact same train of thought can take place in your worlds. In fact, it probably should, if your worlds are believable. We have people on our planet that have different opinions about very basic things. There are still many debates that happen all the way from middle and high school up to things that we see governments participating in that are chewing on different concepts and ideas that humanity, despite our time, our history, our advancement, our science, we still don't have clear, concise, accepted understandings of. So your world can easily mimic those things. And it's kind of one of those things that is going to, and if at the beginning you explain things thoroughly and they go, this is how the magic works. And then later on, something doesn't go quite right when your character starts chewing on that, manipulating and trying to understand it. And maybe they're not in their own arena, they're in a different city. They ask some scholarly person there, and that person's like, what in the world are you talking about? That's not how magic works. And all of a sudden, you've got these disparate components, and probably in reality, neither one is totally accurate, but they're both giving you different pieces that in their own way are true, but not the whole picture. And this is one of those things that's going to make the world feel bigger. It's going to make it feel more in-depth, more understandable, more lived in. If everything makes perfect sense, then why are we in a fantasy world? Now, I can throw that comment out there, and I know that especially folk that really like Brandon Sanderson might have an issue with that. And it's totally fine. We're all coming to fantasy and science fiction for different things. But for me, when you take something and you explore it too much and you make it more of a science, especially as it pertains to fantastic elements, it just doesn't have that same mysterious, fantastic element in my mind. Science fiction is lovely in its own right, but generally science fiction is exploring inward, looking at the psychology of humans. Part of the things that you get to kind of pull apart with Aliens is how would humanity deal with this? Would we unify? Would we diversify? Are the alien races, metaphors for different parts of humanity? Often we see the best or the worst parts of ourselves kind of exposed in those alien speculations. It's just exploring a different thing. And I love science fiction based on the concept that you understand that could potentially work out at some point. I love that. Usually, that's the background for exploring something else, something that could be, as opposed to something that can't be, but then we get to kind of delve into that world. Perhaps one of the biggest reasons, though, that I want to focus on this, and just kind of the second point, third point, wherever we are in this, is the fact that if you can detach yourself from trying to focus on explaining everything, making sure everything makes sense, sometimes that can be particularly freeing if you are coming into this and you have the notion that everything needs to make sense. Like before you can write that first line about this cool castle in the mountains, understand the entire history of where that castle comes from and who built it, and you need to research castles. I hope that you can free yourself from that notion. Now, if you love that you are excited about research and the possibility of doing those things, then you don't need what I'm saying here.
Now I don't have to worry about my ability to run a tires running down and tire and devices 20 years of road use professionals for free with points. So you're covered in pressure nail. Shipping was super quick as well. With next day delivery to nationwide, tires shipped free to your home office or to an installer of your choice, and Tire Rack even has mobile installers in select areas. So if you're needing tires for your ride, new reason to click on. Experience the new tire buying trip. Use the best tools in the business. Compare tires for your exact people and verify what matters most at TireRack.com.
But for a lot of us, weird combinations don't feel bad. For a lot of us, neither feel crap. Like we need to make predictions, like we're listening. So sometimes I will just write out in parentheses what it would actually be in that language, and sometimes I'll just write out something gibberish and a footnote on the page that the principle is set here. It doesn't matter. Just cite the thing and move on. The same is true if I were to reference a historical figure, a town I can't remember or haven't given a name to yet. I will just put in parentheses the name of that name of historical figure who did such feats. These are things that are differences. They're things that will pop up when you try to make your way into your sense or the amount of sense you feel like it should make. And what they are often doing is they're just robots. They're slowing down progress. And again, if this is something that you enjoy, that those pieces and movements are incredibly fun and productive for you, and that they're bringing you joy or they're moving the story along, then don't keep this. But for a lot of us, there's a hindrance there. There is a feeling that we are not living up to the expectations of others or friends or even not our own expectations. So if I can just help a teeny bit by helping you detach from that, you don't have to make everything make sense. I've mentioned a couple times on this channel that Harry Potter is a really well-crafted world, especially if you get inside the singular book. Particularly the first book, I think does this well. And to be totally honest, I've only read one of these books, though I've watched at least 100 hours on the book, so I'm fairly well educated there. But the first book does a really good job of making this mysterious, intriguing, strange world appeal to us. But it does not make sense. You know, when you first get into diagram, when you first start learning about magic works, when I tell you it's this word and this word and it's a wand, we don't know why the words do what they do. And some of this might have been explained in extraneous components, but if we're just looking at the first novel, right? You don't know why the switch and flick of the wand does what it does. You don't know why the words do what they do. You don't know why the wood or the element that is the core of the wand, why that makes a difference. You don't know how Hogwarts is kept secret from everything. You don't know any of these things. The world makes no sense, and way that you could actually break it, explain why all these things are functioning. But it kind of doesn't matter. It's a book written for young kids. The first book is written for like 10 to 12 year olds, right? And it doesn't have to make perfect sense. I jump into The Hobbit, and The Hobbit is this way too. Like, The Lord of the Rings is meticulously crafted, along with The Silmarillion, and they make so much sense. But if you go read The Hobbit, there are all kinds of funky things in The Hobbit that are like, what? Like, we get the trolls who are being goofy, and they're talking about smashing all the dwarves and turning them into jelly or roasting meat. And then there's the purse that talks, like the troll purse that talks. We get the glowing swords. We get the goblin that probably shouldn't know Orcrist and Lamprey, but yet it does. We get the wolves who seem to talk, but we don't get any of that later on. Like, there's so many components. Oh, we get Beorn, this energy, this new incarnate giant bear in the last battle seems to grow like 10 times larger than bear. Like, these things are not explained. Now, if you kind of delve in, as Tolkien explained these things later, a lot of it, yes. But also, a lot of that book is explained by the fact that later on, in canon, The Hobbit is written by Bilbo. Bilbo's a little bit of a showman, a little bit exaggerative. I don't think we are supposed to understand that everything that happens in The Hobbit actually happens as Bilbo represents it. Now, that might sound strange to you, but
They use Codex to not just try one idea, but try like 100 ideas. What Codex has unlocked for us is being able to try out customer feature requests in real time. Now what I'll often do is just copy paste the Slack message into Codex and then create a preview branch and show the feature request to the customer within like 10 minutes. It's about time pet insurance paid claims instantly. With Lemonade, you can also customize your coverage to suit your pet and your budget. Plus, you can save up to 90% on pet bills. It's about time insurance doesn't have you. You can get a quote at lemonade.com/pet. That's an element that you can use in your storytelling. There's no reason why you can't adopt that exact same kind of way of telling the story. There's no reason why everything has to make perfect sense. Your story is a story. Because that's essentially what The Hobbit is. The Hobbit is Bilbo coming back from his all of this adventure that he had. And he's exaggerating pieces. And in fact, it is a plot point in the Fellowship of the Ring, where he actually kind of apologizes to some of the people there. He's like, I'm going to tell the story in full, and like, I ask for your pardon if there are elements that are not exactly the same as I've told it in the past. So we literally know as an element in the canonical story that The Hobbit itself doesn't actually make that is a lot of extrapolating, a lot of explaining, and a little bit of nerding out. Right? I just want to encourage you. You don't have to make everything make sense. You don't have to have that pressure on yourself. If you want to go the Hobbit Lord of the Rings route, where basically this is a story that is coming through several different people, and so there are inconsistencies, the narrator's not entirely reliable, that's fine. If you want to go the way that Harry Potter handles it, the first comic books, where it's just this really intriguing screen world that is probably fairly internally consistent, but the point of the story is not to explain it, it's to back it out. I just want you to feel a sense of relief, detach yourself from potential pressure, to feel like everything has to make sense. Like you have to find a way to explain all these disparate components, because you don't. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. As a little additional point that I won't belabor, because I've mentioned this in a lot of videos, the other aspect here is the fact that including things that don't make perfect sense or produce way increases in mystery. And mystery, I think, is fundamental for most fiction, probably more fundamental and integral component of speculative fiction.
stories make perfect sense. There is an element of people can kind of put themselves inside that world more, and there is a benefit there. The reality is, this world should have mysterious elements, and a lot of times one of the biggest problems that happens with prequels and sequels and post-war movies or otherwise is that mysterious components that people love to kind of chewing on and try to isolate themselves get explained. And that's at a fundamental level seems like not a big deal. But one of the biggest problems that this creates with the community, if there's not any longer anything to chew on, the most egregious form of this that I've seen in the last couple of years is with the release of Tears of the Kingdom, the sequel to Zelda Breath of the Wild, which is one of the best games of all time. If you look at the awards and the accolades, Zelda Breath of the Wild was rife with mysteries. There was lots of environmental storytelling all over the place that just kind of left you hanging. There's so many things to open and debate and to process and to try to chew on. And there was a slew of YouTube channels for years and years, like the better part of a decade after the game came out, that were releasing videos weekly or monthly, chewing on these elements, trying to explore them, trying to explain them. And then, finally, Tears of the Kingdom comes out. The long-awaited sequel. I'm so excited about the game. So if Tolkien can do it, we're not going to explain everything. And I think it's fun to have some characters, have some pieces, components that don't make sense, and maybe don't even make sense. It's true that
¿Qué se aprendió? Que la criminal. La criminal. Criminal.
Anche una colazione. Ok, eso
Sofía sabía. Déjala. ¿Anoche qué? Uy.
Perché mi mira la cara criminale.
No sé.
Vedi, è diventato gente controllato. Zero controllo.
¿Cómo así? ¿Cómo los voy a controlar?
Recoger una infección que nos pasó.
Sí, pues la hicieron, ¿no? Ellos hicieron la inspección, no pasó, ¿no? Este mueble huele mal, ¿no? That's all. Nada. Wow. Four and four. Dijo Snowflakes. 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 16, 4, 16, 4, 12,
Yes.
Great. Bloody people. Okay.